scientists recently admitted something that rewrites everything we thought we knew about human history. The discoveries I'm about to show you weren't made by cutting-edge labs or billion-dollar research teams. They were made thousands of years ago by people we still call primitive. And here's the part that no history textbook will tell you. Some of what ancient civilizations built, we still can't fully replicate today. Not because we lack the intelligence, but because we've lost the knowledge entirely. These are 6 technologies so advanced, so precise, so impossibly ahead of their time, that when modern engineers first studied them, they assumed they were fake. They weren't. So before you assume you know what the ancient world was, capable of, watch this thought in 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers were caught in a storm and forced to anchor near the tiny island of Antikythera. To pass the time, they dove. What they pulled up from 45 meters of black water would confuse archaeologists for over a century. It was a lump of corroded bronze, unremarkable on the outside. But when conservators at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens began to carefully clean it, they found gears, dozens of them, interlocking, precisely machined, more complex than anything else from the ancient world. It was a computer, not metaphorically. Literally, a mechanical computer built sometime around 70 BC, capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, tracking the positions of 5 planets known at the time, calculating the dates of the ancient Olympic Games, and modeling the irregular orbit of the moon with an accuracy that stunned modern astronomers. Dr. Tony Freeth of University College London spent years reverse engineering it using advanced X-ray tomography. His conclusion: the device required a level of mathematical understanding that simply should not have existed yet. It contained a differential gear, a mechanism that wasn't reinvented by Western engineers until the 16th century AD. That's a 1,600-year gap. The Antikythera mechanism wasn't the product of one genius. It was too refined, too mature. It was the product of a tradition, a school of mechanical engineering that history has completely erased. Which means the real question isn't, how did they build this? The real question is, what else did they build that we haven't found yet? But a computer made of bronze isn't even the strangest part of this story. Because the next civilization didn't just track the stars, they built with them. We've been building with concrete for over 150 years. Bridges, dams, skyscrapers, and every single one of them is slowly dying. Modern Portland cement, the concrete holding up. Civilization right now begins to crack and degrade within 50 to 100 years. Salt water destroys it. Seismic stress fractures it. Engineers know this. It's one of the most expensive unsolved problems in infrastructure science. The Romans solved it 2,000 years ago. Structures built with Roman marine concrete, the Pantheon, the harbors of Caesarea, breakwaters submerged in the Mediterranean, for 2 millennia, are not just intact, they are getting stronger. In 2017, a team of researchers from UC Berkeley and universities across Europe published a study in American, a mineralogist that stopped the engineering world cold. Roman concrete, when submerged in seawater, undergoes a mineralization process that causes crystals, called tobermorite, to grow inside it, filling cracks, reinforcing structure, becoming more dense over time. Modern concrete does the exact opposite. The Romans achieved this using volcanic ash from a region near Naples called Pozzuoli, mixed with seawater and lime in specific ratios that took researchers years to decode. Here's what's almost impossible to accept. This formula was in use for 700 years. It built an empire, and then it disappeared. Not because it stopped working, because the knowledge of how to make it was simply lost. Lead researcher Marie Jackson said the rediscovery of this formula could fundamentally change how we build infrastructure in the modern world. We are literally reverse engineering ancient Roman chemistry to save our collapsing bridges. Let that sink in. Roman concrete may outlast us all, but the next technology didn't just defy time, it defied physics. 678 AD, the Arab fleet. Hundreds of warships closes in on Constantinople. The Byzantine defenders are outnumbered, outgunned. The city should fall. And then the Byzantines deploy something the Arab commanders have never seen. From the prows of their ships, a liquid fire erupts, propelled through bronze tubes like a flamethrower, burning across the surface of the water, impossible to extinguish. Sailors throw it overboard. It burns brighter. They pour water on it. It explodes. The Arab fleet is destroyed. Constantinople survives. This was Greek fire, and historians, chemists, and military engineers have spent 1,300 years trying to figure out what it actually was. We still don't fully know. The Byzantine Empire guarded the formula with near religious secrecy. The Emperor Constantine VII wrote that the recipe was divinely revealed to Constantine the Great and must never be shared with foreigners. Under threat of divine punishment, modern chemists have proposed it was a form of crude napalm, naphtha mixed with quicklime, and other accelerants. Others suggest it contained calcium phosphide, which ignites on contact with water. Some point to distilled petroleum compounds not thought to exist in that era. The problem is, none of these theories fully explains what Byzantine historians described. They described a substance that could burn underwater, that clung to flesh and metal like it had a will of its own. That could be reignited after being extinguished. Military strategist John Halden of Princeton University has dedicated years to the question. His conclusion: the formula likely involved multiple compounds working in combination, a system of chemistry so sophisticated it's unlikely to have been discovered by accident. And then, somewhere around the 12th century, the knowledge simply vanished. No formula, no survivors, no trace. One of the most powerful weapons in human history, gone without a single written record of its composition. How do you lose something that powerful? Unless someone made sure it was lost. But Greek fire at least leaves ash behind. The next technology left something far more unsettling: absolute mathematical perfection. Most people know the pyramids by their geometry. 2.3 million stone blocks, aligned to true north within 0.05 degrees. More accurate than most modern buildings. Built to last not years, not centuries, but geological epochs. What most people don't know is that the Great Pyramid of Giza is also a precision acoustic instrument. In the 1990s, researcher John Reed conducted acoustic experiments inside the king's chamber, the bare granite room at the pyramid's core. What he found was not what he expected. The chamber resonates at a frequency of around 438 hertz, unusually close to the musical note A, and strikingly close to certain modern binaural beat frequencies associated with deep meditative states. The granite walls, ceiling, and coffer amplify and sustain sound in ways that cannot be accidental. The coffer itself, a solid granite box with no lid, when struck, rings like a bell tuned to a specific note. That's not stone. That's an instrument. Egyptian archaeoacoustics researcher Miroslav Werner noted that several other tomb chambers across Egypt share similar acoustic properties. Chambers that concentrate, amplify, and sustain specific sound frequencies within spaces meant for ritual. Stanford archaeologist Ian Keat has argued that acoustic engineering in sacred spaces reflects a sophisticated understanding of how sound affects human consciousness, and that this knowledge was deliberately encoded into architecture. But here's what stops researchers cold. There are no plans, no blueprints, no evidence of a trial and error process, no failed prototypes. The acoustic properties are not features of a structure built for sound. They're features of a structure built for eternity that also happens to be acoustically perfect. Either that is the most extraordinary coincidence in the history of architecture, or someone understood physics at a level we're still catching up to. Stone that sings, concrete that grows stronger, fire that burns on water. But nothing prepared modern science for what was found in an ancient Indian surgical text. In 1794, a British surgeon named Lucas published a letter in the Gentleman's Magazine, one of the most widely read publications in England. He described witnessing a surgery performed in India, not performed by a European-trained physician, not performed in a hospital, performed by a man using techniques that Lucas, a trained surgeon, said surpassed anything being practiced in Europe. The procedure was rhinoplasty, reconstructive nose surgery, and it was being performed from a 2,400-year-old manual. The Sushruta Samhita, written by the physician Sushruta in the city of Varanasi around 600 BC, describes over 300 surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments, including techniques for cataracts, skin grafts, cesarean sections, brain surgery, and reconstructive surgery of the nose, ears, and lips. The cataract procedure described, using a curved needle to push the clouded lens aside, remained largely unchanged until the 20th century. Sushruta described germ theory, the concept that diseases could be spread by invisible organisms. Over 2,000 years before, Louis Pasteur, he described the importance of washing hands before surgery. He described how to train surgeons by practicing on gourds, dead animals, and wax mannequins before operating on humans. When the British Royal College of Surgeons finally studied these texts seriously in the 20th century, plastic surgery historian Dr. Ire Papel called Sushruta the father of surgery and plastic surgery, a title that forces an uncomfortable question. If a physician in 600 BC, India had mastered surgical techniques that Europe wouldn't discover for another 2,000 years, what happened to the 2,000 years in between? Where did that knowledge go? And what else was in those texts that hasn't been translated yet? Before we get to the final technology, and I promise you, this one is the one that made NASA scientists stop and go quiet. If you're finding this as disturbing as I am, subscribe, because we go deeper every single week. In 1938, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Nege was cataloging artifacts in the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. He came across a small clay pot, unremarkable, about the size of a fist, that had been discovered near the ancient village of Kujut Rabu, just southeast of Baghdad. Inside the pot was a copper cylinder. Inside the cylinder, an iron rod, held in place by an asphalt stopper. Knag stared at it for a long time. And then he wrote something that would ignite one of the most contentious debates in the history of archaeology. He proposed that the vessel was a galvanic cell, an ancient battery. When scientists later replicated the design using the same materials and filled it with an acidic liquid grape juice, vinegar, it produced between 1.5 and 2 volts of electricity. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. German Egyptologist Arne Egebrecht reportedly used a replica to electroplate a silver statuette, successfully gold-plating it using electricity generated by an ancient Iraqi clay pot. The debate has raged ever since. Skeptics argue the shape is coincidental, that it was a scroll storage vessel and nothing more. Proponents point out that similar vessels have been found across the region, and that some artifacts from the same period show signs of electroplating that cannot be explained by any other known ancient technique. Here's what no one disputes: if the Baghdad battery is real, and multiple independent scientific tests suggest it functions as designed, then electrical technology was discovered, used, and abandoned nearly 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta's voltaic pile in 1799. Not theorized, not proposed, used. For what purpose, we don't know. In what context, we can't say. By whom, exactly. History is silent. We found the device, we lost the story, and that silence is, perhaps, the most unsettling part of everything we've covered today. 6 technologies, 6 civilizations, separated by 1,000 miles and thousands of years, each arriving independently at a level of sophistication that should not have existed. And 6 times, that knowledge vanished, not evolved, not replaced, vanished. The official explanation is that ancient people were smarter than we credit them. That ingenuity has always existed. That knowledge simply gets lost when empires fall. That's probably partially true. But here's what keeps researchers like Dr. Graham Hancock, archaeologist Robert Schoch, and mainstream historians increasingly uncomfortable. The pattern is too consistent. Every one of these technologies, the Antikythera gears, the volcanic concrete, the acoustic chambers, the surgical precision, every single one appears fully formed. No primitive prototypes, no gradual development, no learning curve. They arrive complete, and then they disappear. History, as we've been taught it, assumes a straight line from simple to complex, primitive to advanced, darkness to light. But what if that line has a gap? What if there's a chapter of human history, sophisticated, technical, global, that was simply deleted? Not by accident. The 6 technologies in this video are the ones we found. Think carefully about the ones we haven't.